Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Insights from Women Leaders series. My name is Rola Kaakeh, and I will be the host for this session, as well as the Women series in general. Just to give you a little background on the series, we launched the Insights from Women Leaders series in October of 2020 to highlight the journeys and contributions of various women leaders who share their insights on a range of topics impacting their industries, our communities, and their role in shaping the future. Now, our guests have included leaders from various prestigious and reputable institutions from across the globe. Their backgrounds are diverse, their accomplishments many, and the insights and perspectives provided have been extremely valuable. The goal of the series is to learn from women thought leaders and decision makers to empower current and future leaders, both men and women, to positively impact organizations and communities. Diversity of thought, experiences, industries, education, and training is important to us as it highlights the mosaic of perspectives represented in different settings that help drive decision-making and positive change. I will have about a 40-minute conversation with our guest leader today, structured using questions we traditionally ask all of our guest leaders. Now, we ask these questions that are very similar intentionally throughout the series. This allows you to see the differences in responses and lived experiences. After that, I will ask questions sent to us from our audience prior to this session. So just as a word of advice, you can send other questions that you have for other guest leaders prior to the events. Now let's go ahead and get started today. I am pleased to welcome our guest leader, Savaria Harris. Severia is the board attorney for the Patient Engagement and Customer Solutions Organization as part of the Janssen North America Pharmaceuticals. Since joining Johnson & Johnson in 2016, she has taken on roles of increasing responsibility, serving as dedicated legal counsel to Immunology's Integrated Solutions Customers Solutions team, Janssen's American end-to-end patient engagement team, and the Janssen Specialty Pharmacy Tiger team. In these roles, she has advised business leaders on innovative patient assistance programs across all Janssen therapeutic areas. In recognition of these efforts, she was the recipient of the 2020 Janssen Bravo Award for Driving Disruptive Innovation. She's also a member of the Healthcare Compliance Training and Communications Working Group. She also serves as the chair of the corporate chapter of the Women's Leadership and Inclusion Employee Resource Group, and as a member of the Law Department Task Force for Fighting Racism and Injustice, and is the creator and executive producer of the Wli Elevate Initiative. Prior to joining Johnson & Johnson, she was the litigation partner at the law firm of DLA Piper and Kirkland and Ellis LLP. She's the graduate of Georgetown University Law Center and Yale University. So welcome, and we are so happy to have you today.
Thank you so much, Rola. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, so we're going to start off again with a question we ask all of our guest leaders, and that is, did you expect to be where you are today?
Oh, gracious. I think that's yes and no. I think that does one expect to be in a specific role in a specific place at a specific time? No, right? Like, I don't think that there was a time that I, was growing up saying, I will one day work for Johnson & Johnson in this particular job. I mean, this industry, patient assistance that I work in, has really cropped up over the course of my lifetime. So me being in this role, even actually my current role was created as part of a new center of excellence within the company in 2021. So I couldn't have even imagined it back in 2019 or 2016 when I joined the company, because the center of excellence didn't exist. But did I think that I would be in a place in which I would be working on innovative ideas with really talented people and serving patients and having an impact and making a difference? Yes. And so this sort of goes to the idea that the particular details of a life's journey are somewhat, coincidental, right? Like, you're happening to life, life's happening to you, things are coming up, some expected, some not expected. But the destination, like those big goals of what you want to do, I think those are sort of forever and eternal. And then what shape that they take is just part of the surprise.
Yeah, I like that. I like, because your focus is initially you're talking about kind of like the titles and the positions and like the actual thing. That's not what is expected, and that's often created. And I think we live in a world now where anything can be created in terms of title wise, but the underlying, which is the foundation, which is like the impact and what you wanted to make, is really instrumental. Very nice. Now, what we do is we are going to go a little bit forward in time and think through about what is in the future. And so when you think about your future, keeping in mind kind of that foundation that you've just talked about right there, but what do you want your legacy? What do you want your legacy to be?
Yeah, listen, I fully believe in that expression, you can't be what you can't see. And that's not taking away from all of the like trailblazers who were people, the first, but I really take a lot of personal responsibility along the lines of it's important to represent. It's important to represent women. It's important to represent women of color. It's important to represent Black women. And so I hope that I keep climbing and be in environments and positions of influence and visibility, because it's not just for me, it's for people who are coming up behind me. And it's interesting, I think this notion was put in me by my parents, but I remember really sort of feeling this responsibility early. And it was when I was in high school. And I had gotten into a couple of different colleges, and the guidance counselor had seen me walking around campus, and he's like, I want to speak to you privately, because I want to know, like, have you decided yet? And I hadn't decided yet which school I wanted to go to. And when he met with me, he said, and he was actually Latino, and he said, there's so few of us that get to be in these environments and these rooms and get these experiences. You have an obligation. You have an obligation to choose to be in the best school that you can get into. And that was like I think it had always been like implied. My parents wanted me to do well and comport myself well. But that was like the first time somebody said, it's not just about you. You going and being here does something for your community. It does something for other people. And don't forget it. Your decisions aren't just about you. And so that, I'm 41 now, and that has stayed with me ever since.
That's incredible. Yeah, I think there's so much power in that for a lot of people that think, well, am I being selfish by thinking very big, right? Is it just about me if these goals are so big or this ambition is so big? But in reality, it's not. It's beyond that. And I think that's very powerful, because even as we've gone through our career, it's like seeing someone that looks like you or has a similar background is so powerful, and people underestimate how powerful that is in terms of influence and influencing like generations to come. And so, yeah, I'm really glad that you kind of integrated not only your own legacy, but a legacy that kind of builds beyond, because if we think about it beyond ourselves in that way, that when we succeed and are in positions to allow other people to succeed, that's very good. So definitely agree there. Now, how have your past and present experiences really shaped this outlook for you? You talked a little bit about this one particular experience that you had and kind of the environment that you grew up in, but can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Listen, I think a lot that, especially now, when you have the diverse global world that we all operate in, we see all the time, right? When companies put things out that are tone deaf, and you just wonder who was in the room. Who was in the room? Who opined on that campaign? Who opined on that marketing plan? And, a lot of times people are like wondering, like, well, was there diversity in the room? Like, how could that have gotten through? And so I really, I don't think I bring like the Black experience, the woman experience, but I bring my experience and I value it. And so if I'm in a conversation about something that doesn't make sense to me, I'll say it. And I'll say, hey, this doesn't make sense to me. And we were once working on a campaign, and I'll try to be confidential, protect attorney-client privilege. We were working on a campaign, and the idea was to do outreach, which was a wonderful thing. And And it was outreach to individuals who had a particular condition. And someone in my family has that medical condition, very close individual. So I know exactly, I have the prototype in my mind. And this campaign was supposed to reach this type of individual. And when the campaign laid out of like, we're going to use these individuals, these influencers, I was immediately like, won't work. and it wasn't even my job really to say that, because I was there from a legal perspective. Like, is it legal? Mm-hmm. And I was like, listen, from a legal perspective, you can do this. Mm-hmm. But I'm just telling you, I know dead to right, this will not work. Mm-hmm. I know the audience that you're trying to reach, this is not for them. And they don't even listen to the people that you are proposing to be the spokespeople. And so they respectfully made a pivot, which was awesome. But I think that that's the purpose of having your voice in the room, to be able to say and to acknowledge your lane, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I had to acknowledge this isn't my call, because my calls are legal calls. But given that you have the benefit of my presence, let me share another angle that may not have been considered. And so that was, within the last 5 years. And it's just about, as I say to people all the time, what is the point mm-hmm. of being in a position to influence if you don't do it? What's the point?
Yeah. And I think it builds on what you were saying too, in terms of like being that person in that room and taking that opportunity, even though it might seem kind of like non-traditional or not within your job description or whatnot, but taking that opportunity since you're there, because in reality, you don't know if someone else is going to be there that's going to, be able to speak up at that point, or when that decision is going to be made. So I think you positioning yourself, no matter where you are, and keeping it kind of in the back of like, who is it that I could be impacting or serving in the work that I do, regardless of what's being said. Like you said, like you're on the legal side, but in reality, you do have a true influence, giving a different perspective. And being that voice for those that are outside of that room, which I think is really powerful. Now, can you share a failure that you experienced that made you do things differently?
Oh, yeah. A failure. I mean, it's like, how long do we have? No, I mean,
there's a lot of humility in saying that, by the way. And I think that's just so great about this conversation of failure. I think the judge of a true person's humility is to say that, oh yeah, fail all the time. So let's pick one. Let's pick one to talk about it.
Yeah,
so,
let's get precise this week. So in all seriousness, I actually I grew up very perfectionist, like very sort of all or nothing, like A's and, no curvy letters. And, it's like, it's all or nothing. And it was like one of life's lessons as I got older, that there were going to be experiences that I couldn't have predicted, and that there were going to be things that didn't go well, that I had worked on, that just, it wasn't what the moment needed. It wasn't good enough. And there were also going to be times that there was going to be changes in my professional life that I couldn't have predicted. And I remember sort of trying for a long time to reconcile, how do things happen professionally when you do everything right, or you think you do everything right, and then you don't get the thing. And then it happened in my personal life. I got divorced. And that was something that I did not sort of bank on. I didn't expect for that to happen. And I was very embarrassed. And so I was like very confronted with the fact that my life story was getting built in a way that I couldn't erase things. I couldn't redline it out. I couldn't be like, oh, nope, take out that chapter. Oh, nope, take out that chapter. And I came across a quote that said, failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is a part of success. And what was interesting was that after I did go through that very personal loss, and it happened right shortly before the pandemic, like maybe 3 months before the pandemic, that's when I got really creative and created the Wli Elevate Initiative, which was all about women having authentic conversations, which then blew up and took off wildly, bigger than my wildest expectations, and we had all of these incredible women at J&J first starting the conversation, and then women externally like Nicole Kidman and Oprah Winfrey and all these other people wanting.
I love how you just say Oprah. You just say Oprah, like, and there's Oprah, but yeah, like let's continue.
Queen Oprah is really what I should say. But
she is royalty here in America.
She is royalty. It was just like holy cannoli. Like I really started to realize, and then like Oprah has this expression, which is like, things don't happen to you, they happen for you. Mm-hmm. And I really started to internalize that. And so even now, when things are not going the way that I think that they should, I remind myself that's your ego. Mm-hmm. That's your ego. Because you think you already know the movie of your life. Yeah. Yeah. You think you know how the story ends. So you're like, that shouldn't happen. And it's like, that's don't know the movie. Mm-hmm. Like it's supposed to do this and then go like this and then it goes way up. Like, so just trust that whatever is showing up is happening for you. Maybe the for you is not you like it. The for you is, what are you supposed to learn? How are you supposed to develop? Is this telling you it's time to go? Is it telling you it's time to gain a new skill? Is it telling you that it's time to get courageous? What is it telling you? At the end of the day, it's serving you. Mm-hmm. And that just, after that, there was no failure. There was just things that happened for me, every single last one.
And even if you take that, like it happened for you in the sense that like you then you thought about what is it maybe that you need or how you can grow, how you can become stronger. And then out of that came such an enormous thing that could help everybody else. So it actually turned into something for you that you became then generous with. And so I think that's also really powerful, because it's like we often think about how we're reacting and how it affects us. But if you can turn it around, and that's actually a prime example of turning it around and creating not only something that, I'm sure with you, every time you have these conversations, and I think we've noticed this too, it's like every time I have a conversation with them, I'm inspired. It's like it fills my cup in a way, like, and then, but also with the hopes that it can help others. So that failure became something that not only fills your cup, but actually fills and inspires other people to get back at your same point, right? Like it kind of becomes your part of your legacy.
It does. And then the great thing about it is, you sort of look back. Steve Jobs has this whole quote that I love. And he's like, you can never connect the dots, while you're going through it. You can only connect them like in hindsight. And I'm paraphrasing, but I love that idea of like, you don't actually know. This thing is, you can say, okay, well, I didn't want this project to end, or I didn't want this relationship to end, or I didn't want this job to end, or whatever it is. But the thing is, you have no idea how that dot of it ending is going to open you up to having to think about the next thing. See, sometimes we won't even think about the next thing. Mm-hmm. We won't even shoot for happy. We won't shoot for that. We'll shoot for content, comfortable. We shoot for that. And so sometimes you need sort of this to clear out so that you can shoot once again for what you deserve.
Yeah, love it. And that actually gets perfectly to our next question in terms of even when you're thinking back about these things, whether it be the failures or just in general, is there anything that you wish you would have done differently or made a conscious effort for? It's not about like regret or anything, but it's just like, are you the type that looks back and like overanalyzes and starts thinking about that?
Oh, I overthink all the time. It's one of my favorite hobbies. I would say that I would be less convinced that failure was final. I am, I think, a different leader now. I can roll with it more, like I'm never, it used to be, I was cool on the outside, but inside, like, I was like, oh my God. And now the cool is like more authentic. Like, it's just more like, okay, that's where we are now. Okay. Then like, it's that trust, right? And I had to even say to one of my teams recently, we were working on Elevate and we came up with the challenge. And I was like, see, we can't just talk the talk. We have to walk it. So if we believe that things happen for us, not to us, then we have to act like that even in this moment, right? Because that's what we encourage other people to do. So I think that before, when I used to sort of think failure was final, like, oh, this goes on your report card, like your life report card, this thing didn't happen, you got a D, like that's there forever. And now I just sort of, I'm so much more understanding that, that life is like way more forgiving. There's no life report card. And if there is one, like grades fall off after time. There's like a statute of limitations, like, like,
that's
okay,
when you stop writing them, on your old like CV, you're like, you just stop writing after a certain point.
Exactly. You just stop writing. Or it's like, okay, those grades fell off. Now we have a new grade. Like, it's just, you don't have to be so concerned about your record, because people have come back from all kinds of things. And in fact, especially I think in the US, we are like the land of the comeback story. We're sort of interested in the comeback story. People like you if you have had a solid record of performance, but they really are inspired by you when they feel like you overcame something. And so you should never be afraid of the part of the story where you had to overcome, because that's actually the outlet for people to get excited by you.
Yeah, the adversity, the overcoming adversity, the strength in that, building that resilience there for sure. Now, what excites you about the future?
So I like to think about the future a lot. I really do. I'm excited by the white space, which was like a phrase that a former manager of mine used to use. And I was like, what is the white space? It's like the wall, like the white wall, like it's the white space. Everything is there. Everything is possible. And I'm energized by the opportunity to create in a way that is unencumbered from the past. And I think there can be this bizarre veneration of the past. We used to do it like this. We used to do it like, okay, and that had a nice run. And now it's time to do it better, right? Like, you shouldn't do something the 100th time like you did it the first time, right? Like, there's growing, there's learning. And so I'm excited by the opportunity for innovation. And I'll tell you something, with this pandemic, people use this, when are we going to go back? We're not going back. That's my personal opinion. Like, we're not going. How about this? When else in history have you been able to go back?
Yeah.
Like, we're not going back. Like, like that's the thing, is like 2 years have passed, I can no sooner go back to how it was before the pandemic than I can go back to being 39. Yeah. So the question is, how do you go forward in a way where you carry with you the values and the learnings and the lessons and the experiences so that the future is better? Mm-hmm. The future can always be better than the past, but not if you don't let go. So if you ask me, like, what am I excited? I'm actually excited about this time in history and what is it creating in terms of even this, right? This conversation is a product of where we are in this point in time. And I think it's exciting.
Yeah. No, I love the white sheet or the white wall analogy, because it's the white space. It's so great because, like, if you think about it, it does excite you because you're like, well, you have the opportunity. Someone's giving you a white space. Like, just think of a white piece of paper, like, just design the world that you want to live in, you personally, or want to change. Why, if you would just like copy, the previous one, it would not be, you can't choose the colors, you can't choose like anything that kind of pertains to that. And I think there's so much excitement there because it's like you can create not only what you want and just add in elements of everybody else's kind of needs and stuff. So that's a great analogy in terms of looking at the future, because it allows us the opportunity to think like designers and like to think that, okay, we can design because we're given this white space to do so. Now, when we talk a lot about in this series, a lot about like skills and things that we need moving forward. So what do you think we need in terms of tools or skills to tackle on a lot of these, challenges that many of us are trying to address?
I think we need two things. I think we need honesty, and I think we need safety. And you don't get one without the other. So, if you're honest, if you want honesty from others, you have to be safe for them to share it with you. And you don't get honesty without a safe space. So those things are traveling companions. But I think the reality is that we've got a lot of different generations in the workplace right now, a lot. And people don't all feel the same way. They don't even live the same way. They don't even define work the same way. We got some people thinking work is where you go. We've got some people thinking work is what you do. And so I think that being honest about that and not acting like we all feel one way, that's the fallacy. We don't all want to do any one thing. And that's not a bad thing, because guess what? When do we ever all want to do one thing? So I think that we've sort of gotten into this like monolith of like, we have people who want to do this, we have people who don't want to do that, as though that's like wrong, or as though that diversity of thought, diversity of opinion is like somehow new and unexpected. And instead, what I think is like, if we want to really hold our teams together, hold our workplaces together, be able to innovate for the future, we've got to get radically honest about what is it that you want to say? What is the world that you want to have? Because that's where the ideas are. But if you don't allow people to be honest about how their life has changed, and I mean, let me be real, some of your employees out there, folks, have relocated. You may not know it, but they're not in the same house you last sent, that pay stub to. Like, they're not there anymore, but they're not telling you because they don't think it's safe. And so, but the future depends on the honesty. Because if we keep acting like we're all having the same experience, then we don't get to create a mosaic that really fits our present. So I think I strive for that. I'll tell you, it doesn't always feel good. Sometimes people are being honest to you about you, and you're like, okay, enough honesty, thank you. But and I even had one day where someone was really honest with me, and I was like, who do they think they're talking to, in my mind?
Yeah.
And then I was like, it's such a compliment though.
Because they felt safe.
Mm-hmm. Some people do that behind your back.
Yeah.
And so I think that we have to, as leaders, create an environment where people are like, I may not agree with Severia, but I can tell her. She won't retaliate. She won't reprise against me. And maybe in that conversation, we can come up with something better that works for all of us.
Yeah. I like it. And I think too, the important thing that you note there too, is just like, so much of it is we think about like kind of our external environment and like, where we are in that place, but then reflecting, but it's more important too, to like self-reflect, like, am I, like you said, being honest in order that others are honest with me? Am I a safe space so that I can, reciprocate that as well? So I think that that's very important in terms of understanding that. And then trust and honesty is a foundation across the board, regardless of even if you agree or you're talking to people you agree or disagree with in general. And so I think those are wonderful fundamental elements there. Now, let's talk a little bit about definition. You said everyone defines things a little bit differently. One thing that people could define very differently, whether it also be personal or professionally or whatnot, is success. So how do you define success?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So I haven't seen this classmate in like a million years, but I truly believe the best definition of success came from a classmate of mine who I think wrote it in yearbook in like the 9th grade. And I'm tempted to like quote her, but then she's gonna be like, I didn't write that. So I'll just say the quote. But it was like, how do you define success? And what she said, wisdom out of the mouth of babes, was success is being happy with everything that I do. And I was like, even then I was like, like, she didn't put it on a thing. Yeah. She didn't put it on a grade. She didn't put it on getting into a certain college. She didn't put it on a certain boy liking her. She didn't put it on her parents gifting her. So she didn't put it on a thing. success for her was going to be, I'm happy with what I did here. I'm happy with what I did here in every aspect of her life. And the older I get, and I've defined it a million different ways. I've defined it as a title. I've defined it as a promotion. I've defined it as a relational status. I've defined it as being able to go certain places and do certain things. And I am now convinced those were not the right definitions. The definition for me is the true definition. When you stop striving, you stop comparing, is when you're happy. When you're like, I'm good. I'm happy with I'm happy with how I show up as a friend. I'm happy with how I show up as a partner. I'm happy with how I show up at work. I'm happy with my charitable service. Whatever it is that you're prioritizing, I'm happy with my workout. Whatever it is, that is true happiness, because when that's true success, because I think so many people will put it on a thing, get the thing, and then say, why am I not happy? And it's like, because it's out there. And when you define it in here, which is I get to decide my effort level. And when I meet what I expect of myself, I've succeeded. I think that's brilliant. I think that's brilliant.
And you're tying it with something else that I feel is like a continuous process, which is happiness. It's not like, you're not the same thing. You're not going to just get one thing and like, eat a donut and you're happy, and then you're never going to be happy again, or you get that project or that grade or whatever it is, and then or that job, and then you are just happy at that. Happiness is also a continuous pursuit. And so for somebody that wants to be successful or continue to be successful, and that be a continuous pursuit versus if you achieve so many things, and I think we see this a lot with high achievers, is that they already achieved so much. So if they had set the bar this high and they've already, past it, and they were still even young, they have their whole life ahead of them, and it gets that whole I've achieved everything. And so I think that's great in terms of linking it together, linking it with something else that's also a constant pursuit, is what I'm trying to say there. Now, what challenges are developing you?
Ooh. Oh, gracious. What challenges are developing me? Patience. That's a great one. So I have a need for speed. I'm like a Sagittarius. I'm high energy. I like to see things happen. I like to do things out. Actually, fast pace doesn't stress me out the way it should. There's probably a little bit of an adrenaline junkie element to how I work. I'm excited and passionate, and things are happening, and we got to get this out. I'm in my element. I'm in my zone. And you can get a lot done moving like that. But okay, I do want to plug it. You can get a lot done. Yeah. But sometimes you should stay your hand. Sometimes you should wait. Sometimes you need to let other people just digest. Just digest what you've said. Not everybody's brain moves at the same speed. To some people, moving that fast is crazy making. And it suggests to them that things are getting missed. And it suggests to them that things aren't being considered. And it suggests to them that things are getting turned over. And so I've had to understand not everybody's style is my style. And so I've now gotten better about my follow-up. My follow-up used to be have we heard? Have we heard what's going on? Why haven't we heard? Now I'm let's give it another day. In fact, I just did that. Literally, there was somebody on my team was to hell with it. Forward. They had plenty of time to comment. And I'm let's give it another day. Yeah. Let's give it another day. Because I know that sometimes giving it more time things just percolate. It's I don't know if it's if you've ever cooked and you put something on a slow cooker, and it's why does this taste better after cooking for 6 hours than cooking for 2 hours? All that's happened is heat has been applied. I haven't added anything else to the crock pot. But it's sometimes there is progress even in what seems to be stillness. And the patience is letting and trusting that there's progress when it goes like this, but there's also progress when it's going like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so great. I'm so glad you say that. They mentioned patience, because I feel patience and action go together like talking and listening, right? Like you can't, like it, to truly be effective in communication, you have to listen. Like if you miss that part, you're missing a big element of it. And if you're also only in action stage without patience, there's also so many elements that you can miss. The flavor might not be as good as, like you said, you know, using an analogy. And in all disclaimers, I'm more of a stir fry person, and I wonder, because I have no patience for the 6 hours, but maybe I should, you know, do that exactly because it tastes better, right? But again, yeah, it does make you think, like there is that element of, you know, the weight or the patience that's associated, just like how it takes a lot of effort for a lot of people to truly listen. Right. Yes. For some people, patience is also difficult, but also listening is very difficult. But it is like such an instrumental part there. So yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Sure. All the time. So a couple of things before we go into like the leadership section. This has been such an amazing conversation. But one of the things, and I think that you will provide so much insight into this, and I think we find that a lot with a lot, I personally find it a lot with my female colleagues, is that it's very hard for us to ask for help. We sometimes see it as kind of the sign of weakness, or, you know, or like, at what point do you need to ask for help? So do you have any advice on, like, you know, seeking support, or like, you know, prioritizing those kinds of conversations within your career?
100%. And I am a self-confessed under-escalator. So I under-escalate things, and that's not good. And so I'm speaking like to myself, and even in answering this question, and I'm only started to change, I'd say really in the last year. But I used to always want people to feel like I've had it under control. Under control. You know, you look at me, it's under control. Doesn't matter how I had to break my back to make it happen, but it was like, it's under control. You know, no, you don't have to look at me. There's not going to be any problems over here. And I started to realize that it was giving the false sense of how hard it was to pull off some of the things that I was pulling off. You know, so you want the credit for it looking flawless, but then you have to also know that sometimes people aren't paying attention enough to know all of the things that you had to do and fix for it to show up that way. And I started to sort of realize this as like escalating sometimes lets people into your life and to see, you know, this is what I'm dealing with, right? This is what I'm dealing with. And you can even, this is a tip for all the listeners out there, you can even escalate and say, I'm handling it, but I wanted you to be aware. Yeah. Okay. And that does 2 things. One, it lets the other person get the backstage pass to your life and all of the things that you're dealing with to deliver this product, this output. But also what it does too is it opens up their insights and their network. And this ties into something that I've really come to believe in, which is like pass the microphone, which is, you're not always going to be the person that people can receive the message from. So you can be completely right about something, but for whatever reason, people can't receive it from you. You're not senior enough. You're not whatever enough. You're just not who they want to hear that from. And when you bring people in, that's what I now consider escalating. When you bring people in judiciously, not like every day, you know, but like when you bring people in and are like, this is what I'm dealing with, I'm handling it, but this is what I'm dealing with. It gives them the opportunity to say, let me take the microphone. Let me help. Let me talk to somebody who can talk to them, because you can't fix it all by yourself. I mean, even if you're amazing, super Wonder Woman, incredible at your job, the day will come when someone does not want to hear what you have to say. And if you don't let people in, they can't help you. So I really do say, as a former under escalator, like, let people in, let them see what you're going through, because at a minimum, the acknowledgement of what you do will be so much more complete. Yeah. Oh my God, I love that.
So great. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about leadership. We asked all of our guest leaders a quote unquote simple question, which is, how do you define a leader? Everyone's told me it's not simple, Rola. You have to stop saying simple question. But how do you define a leader? You responded with the following. All leaders in any industry have three important responsibilities. First is setting a clear vision that others can get excited about and constantly refining that vision to be relevant and fresh. Second, being accountable when things invariably go wrong and promptly making decisions to resolve problems that stakeholders can trust that the project has someone who will be accountable. Finally, sharing the credit, inspiring and celebrating their team when things go well. Can you elaborate on this and what's shaped this outlook for you?
Yeah. And you know what I will say, it's been like evolving definition, and I think my experience working in a firm, first of all, taught me the first thing and the second, which is you need to have a vision. Somebody's got to set the course, and then someone's got to be accountable for the course being followed, because otherwise it's like, okay, but who's going to make sure that this happens, right? And it's a lot of fun to be able to set the course. It's a lot of responsibility too. It's not as fun to be accountable when the course is going haywire. But I think I've got to work for a lot of people who did those two things very, very well. But the third thing, which is celebrating the team and really sharing the credit, was something that I learned at J&J. And J&J is a very collaborative matrix culture. And there is like, we did this. And I think that was a real learning for me. Not that I wanted to hoard the credit. I actually liked bringing people in and doing things together, but really just the idea of like, it's so easy when something goes well that like the head of the project will get a lot of light, get a lot of spotlight. And one thing that J&J does really well is to make sure that like the team is acknowledged. And so that became part of my lexicon and my vocabulary. And so when I've worked on things with the team, like I'll try to send, my version of an inspirational note to everybody, thanking everybody. I'll try to do something where I identify every single person and what they specifically, thank you, Rola, for doing the beautiful interview. Like I will try to identify exactly what you did, so that the credit really is shared. And I think that that's actually important because we all want recognition and we all want acknowledgement. And actually there have been times where I've even been thanked for things where I felt like my role was like super, super small, and it feels good, right? Yeah. like you're like, oh, I was just this little part, but they still remembered me. So I think that also the job of the leader is to make sure that they are on top of what people are doing, not to like micromanage them, but they are aware so that when it comes time to give people credit, they are sure not to forget, because I think that is the role of the leader.
Yeah, because it's so important even to feel like you've been seen. Yes. In a way, regardless of like the amount of work that you've done, I think, and to be seen then, because then you feel part of that team. You feel very much part of that we. And I think something you also said that was really interesting, and I found that the case with people that kind of have like different sections, I would say, or like the numbers of their leadership in their leadership definition, is each of those are brought about from different experiences that they've had, right? And so like you said, like, there's like three parts to this, but this has been built over the years. And I think that also shows you that a leader is very multidimensional, and you sometimes see those different elements at varying parts of your career and learn from that, which is something I took a lot when I read that quote. And I was like, wow, you can see that it is a work in progress and it can change. And there's different elements of a definition of leader, regardless with that. Now, what do you think we're getting wrong about leadership?
The leaders don't need to be supported.
It's really good.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Yeah.
And I heard another quote recently that I really liked, which was like, you don't get to wear the crown without the guillotine. Mm-hmm. And I really liked that in the sense that it's tough, you know, to be the face of something it is for the good and for the ill. And when I say leaders need support, I don't just mean like support on the project. I mean like their mental health needs support. Like, because this is the person who's trying to hold it together for everybody else. And growing up, you used to hear people say like, pray for your leaders, or like pray for your pastor. And I'm like, why do they like, they're up here. Like, why do they need prayer? But as I've gotten older, I'm like, no, because the people who are running things, you especially need for them to be okay.
Yeah.
Because when they're not, we've seen throughout history what happens when you have people in leadership who are not okay, who are not secure, who are not well. That has ripple effects on all of us. And so I think like one of the conversations that I would love to see come up more, and the part of it is because it's that the part of why it doesn't happen is because it's not an obvious candidate for support, right? But really, the person who's holding it together for everybody else needs a support system of their own. And I think that is something that we need to recognize is like, if you're getting promoted into a position of leadership, you're taking on more stress, you're taking on more problems, you're taking on more issues. Yes, you'll get the title, you'll get the recognition, you'll get the creativity, but that comes with a new set of responsibilities, and you will need help to get through that.
Yeah, that's so great, because we often have those conversations around being comfortable enough to go to your leader and ask them for help. But then also we need those conversations of what help and what does the leader themselves also need to be successful, which is really great. Now, we're very advice driven, kind of like lessons learned, things that are very, particular about that. So in the topic of leadership and mentorship and, growing oneself, what advice have you learned that you want to pass along regarding one's career or kind of looking at leadership in general?
Okay, so I think what I would say is what I know for certain about your career is that it is not going to go entirely as you expect. That I can promise you. So with that said, agility is going to be your greatest gift. And I really sort of believe in looking at your career a little bit like a GPS, right? You have a destination, you have a goal, sort of going back to the beginning of the conversation. And for me, I make that goal a feeling. I don't even make it a particular title or a job. I make it a feeling, which is I want to feel empowered. I want to feel visible. I want to feel like I can make an impact. I want to feel like what I say matters. And I want to feel free, meaning free to do all of those things. Right? And there are certain things that can't be present for you to feel those things. If you're being undermined, you can't feel empowered, right? So if you feel beholden, you can't feel free. So I make it about how I feel. And then I'm very interested in opportunities that I think will position me to get to that destination. And I don't tie it to a particular job, because let me tell even the youngest of listeners, okay, there are people who think their life is over when they don't get into the college they want. Yeah. And then after they do that, they think their life is over if they don't get into the law school they want. And if that, then they think it's over if they don't get to clerk for the judge they want, or get on the law journal they want, or get to work for the firm that they want. And it doesn't matter. That's like my whole life. None of that matters. And if you are the kind of person who make your career and your life contingent on one decision, or even a couple of different decisions, breaking exactly the way you want it to, you're finished. You will have disqualified yourself. Life won't have. You will have disqualified you. So get agile like a GPS. The GPS tells you make a left. If you go straight, it just reroutes you. You're still on track. It might take longer.
Still tell you, yeah. It might get mad, but it
doesn't say pull over. This ride is over. Like it's
someone else to drive. It doesn't tell you. I don't think that's been the option yet.
Yeah, it doesn't
told
say
me yet. So.
Ride terminated. It's not.
Figure it out and then get back to me. It does not say that.
It doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. It's like, okay, then make the turn at the next left.
Yeah.
And so that's the way that I sort of see my career is like right now I'm going straight, and I might make a left one day, I might make a right one day. It never takes me off the destination. It never takes me off the goal. And what that also does is it frees you so that if you do get the job or the clerkship or the law school or whatever it is, and it isn't getting you to your goal, because that happens, because you get into things and they're not what you expect, you are not afraid to reroute because you know what your true purpose is.
Yeah. And also when you said that you tie it to a feeling, it brought me back to how you said success and happiness, which you also tied, to feeling and more internal, which is amazing. Now, our last question before we go into some of the audience questions that were submitted is that we tend to spend this last time, taking an opportunity to support one another and recognize the positive influence we've had on one another. Can you name a woman or two, because people have cheated, who has inspired you, and why did you choose this person?
Gosh, I'm such a fangirl of so many.
There's so many incredible
women, so many incredible women. It's like, it isn't just one. I'm giving you a woman.
Okay.
But a woman whose story I thought to be incredible. I am really the biggest fan of what I call it, the unintended hero. Somebody who wasn't trying to become the hero, but in becoming the hero of their own life story, becomes the hero for others. And Harriet Tubman, and I'm taking it all the way back, but it's Black History Month. So
yeah, exactly.
There's
no timeline. We didn't specify
exactly.
Until what point.
Exactly. And I
influence
got my
influence.
Exactly. And I even got my aunt a Harriet Tubman necklace for Christmas one year. But nice. I really, when you look at that woman's life story, she did far more than just free the slaves. I mean, she led one of the armies in the Union and helped release a whole bunch of slaves and coordinated this attack. I mean, she was brilliant. But what's interesting about her is when you look at her story, nothing about her said that she should have become as great as she was. She was born into circumstances that were intended to diminish her. She had been hit in the head with a brick, and that caused epilepsy, seizures for the rest of her life. And she would be out cold during these seizures. Now, I don't know about you, but if somebody is leading your way on running away or navigating, I would hope that they wouldn't pass out for long stretches at a time. But despite that, she had the courage to run away, right? She had the courage to be I am unconscious for long stretches at a time. I could find myself right back where I started from. I could go into a seizure, be out, be captured, and taken back. And despite that very clear handicap, she moved forward and she saved herself. And then when she got there, she went back, not to save a whole bunch of people. That's what people think. She went back to save her husband. And when she got there, she found out that he had married another woman and he wasn't going to run. And it was on her return back that other slaves said, "We want to come with you." Now, can you imagine? You already have this treacherous journey you have to make and this physical condition that causes you to be out for long periods of time. And now you've got other people saying, "We want to depend on you. We want to follow you." And she took it. And she did it again and again and again and again. And the journey of her going from being a single actor who was trying to just save herself to a leader who was I'm putting my life at risk every single time that I do this. Every single time I do it, it's treacherous. But I'm doing it because I believe in something greater for people. I just think that to me is bigger than anybody who wakes up and is I'm going to be president one day. That sort of evolution of oneself from being self-focused to vision-focused, community-focused, future-focused, other-focused it's everything.
And even that, I feel like that story ties into what you initially said in terms of, even if it's self-focused at first, you don't know who you're influencing. You don't know who you're motivating and that want to follow suit or, want to be inspired by you. And then kind of that element of, not being so focused on what others say your story should be. Right. And then creating kind of that white space of saying, I'm designing this, I'm going back and doing, this is how I want to do it, regardless of the challenges that you have. And like you mentioned, there's so many challenges. And I think that goes back to the, those stories of adversity and challenges, and recognizing the more conversations you have with people and they're being genuine and real, you see that everyone has their different elements of challenges, right? That exists, right now you can see the picture perfect world that everyone kind of wants to portray, but I think everyone has those challenges and adversity. But those people that don't want others to control their narrative, they want to design a better world, for themselves, their families, and others. I think that's really powerful. And thank you for telling that story, especially for a lot of our audience that might have not, known those stories. So now,
can I just say one thing too?
Of course.
And it also connects with the point about you can't connect the dots while you're in it. I often wonder what would have happened if she had gotten word that her husband had remarried before she made the trek. How would she have gone back? And if she hadn't made that trip back, how would history have changed? How would she have been changed? Mm-hmm. So it's sort of like, I'm sure that felt like the worst feeling in the world as a woman, to risk your life to get free, then to risk it again to come back, and to just at a human level find out this person is not waiting for you. Mm-hmm. And she could have probably felt like, why did I come all the way down here? But then the mission was revealed. Mm-hmm. It's not about him. And it's actually not even about you. It's about all of these people that you're going to start taking with you. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I'm like, the dots, the whole purpose of that relationship with that man was to give her enough motivation to come back. And when she saw that she could safely go back and forth, that was the beginning of history changing.
Mm-hmm. And the power to elevate others.
That's right.
We're linking all of this stuff together. Okay,
let's come together.
I love it. Okay, let's ask just a couple of questions, just for the ones that the audience sent, which I think is really good. One that was really interesting, which I think is very much true in terms of a lot of the conversations. And I know a lot of conversations I have with successful people in general is that they do things consistently. Like one of the metrics of being able to, succeed in however you define, success, but is to do things consistently over time or whatever it is. So are there things that you consistently do?
Yes. Yes, there are things that I consistently do. Let's see, what are those things that probably consistently lead to my success? I would definitely say I'm at my best when I'm doing certain things consistently. And amongst those things are prayer. Mm-hmm. I honestly start every day with prayer. Nice. I journal. And that's actually both of those are stress management tools, believe it or not. And when I'm really on my game, I'm moving my body consistently, whether it's yoga or it's Peloton. But it's funny that the thing that I'm really coming to understand is that everything is happening at the thought level, and that the world around you is just circumstances, but you're putting meaning onto that. It's 35 degrees outside today. Oh, I hate the cold. That's your story. Somebody else might be like, I love the winter. Like everything, your lived experience is about what you're thinking up here. Mm-hmm. And so I'm very much about, you got to take care of this, because if you're not taking care of your thoughts and your stress, then for me, my life will start to look chaotic real quick. It will not look like me at my best. And so I have to be doing at least one of those techniques every single day. And ideally, when I'm at my best, I'm doing all three. Mm-hmm. And I generally hit at least two, but doing doing prayer and journaling and some sort of physical movement keeps me able to withstand the stress, the politics, the upsets, the things that don't go my way. And so from the outside, you're like, man, it's consistent, boy. Like she just delivers, like, like, look at this challenge, look at that challenge. And she's just delivering. But the reason is because I'm taking care of my psyche in a way that allows me to show up the same way, regardless of the circumstances.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Because I feel like we often think about like the strength of our body. And I think, like you had mentioned, the strength of your mind and your thoughts plays such a big role in how you see your day, for sure. And the weather one's an example because I hate the cold. So I'm very much like, I hate this cold. But, and so that when you just mention that as an example, it's very true because it sets the whole tone for your day. Whereas like, you want to make an effort to even think about that, or is there something else you want to think about and waste, or consume your energy on that, or have that thought process that'll better serve you than the weather, which is what I'm trying to do. Okay. Now I'm in Chicago and it's so cold. So
listen, I'm in New York City and it's tough. Look, I grew up in Southern California, so I'm right there with you. Like I know, but it's such an easy example, right? So and you're right. You start your day with that thought. Things aren't going my way. You look out, you see the crap weather, and then you things aren't. That's already one thing not going your way.
Even though and that's something definitely you can't control. I mean, it's not like all of a sudden I tried asking who should I talk to about this. Nobody's telling me. So now there's another question too, which I think is really interesting because we do kind of live in this world right now where, and I think we've always lived in this. And like you had mentioned too, there's realities that we've lived or had these elements of this prior, but now I feel like many more people are having these conversations around talking with, discussing, and really trying to have conversations with people with very different views than you, or working on projects with someone that maybe might not agree with you on something. So do you have any advice for our listeners that feel like they're kind of constantly, they want to engage diverse stakeholders, they want to have very interesting conversations, but they also want to go about it in the best possible way, because oftentimes you're in instances where people aren't agreeing with you. And so what's some advice there that you can provide?
It's hard. I mean, I think like, first of all, the first thing that I can provide is compassion, because it's not easy, to engage when you feel like you're dealing with somebody who is either at a different style than yours, has different concerns than you do. Sometimes you're concerned even about the competency level being the same. Are they as expert as you are? And I think that there's a couple of different scenarios. There's not a one size fits all answer to this. I think that if you can get everybody aligned on the mission, then you can sort of create space for the different styles. So for like, look, if it's like, you don't like my style, you think I'm moving too fast, I don't like your style, I think you're, taking too long. But if we're at least all on the same page about like, but we want to get this done, right? Then I think you create space for people to be who they are on the team of getting it done. I think when you don't have alignment that everybody in the room wants to get the same thing done, it's a lot harder. You want to do this, I want to not do that, or I want to do some other thing. I think that's a lot harder. And I think that when that's the case, I would say like fundamentally, we've got to back it up and see if we can get everybody aligned on the same mission. And if we can't get aligned on the same mission, then I think then we really should be asking the question, is this the right team? Because sometimes people's skills aren't aligned to the task at hand. So if this is going to be a slow boil, multi-year, very slow development project, maybe Severia isn't your girl. Maybe that's not where to put her, but somebody else who is not discouraged, but it is really comforted and feels like they're digging in on that pace is the right person for the team. So I do think that we should have diversity of thought, diversity of background on projects. But at the same time, I think we got to make sure that everybody in the room is aligned to the same mission. Mm-hmm. If they're not aligned to the same mission, we need to take a look at the team and decide if we have the right team. Because I don't think that having people with misaligned intentions is the kind of diversity that we need. We need people having the same intention and diversity of thought to get to the best outcome.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm going to circle back to your GPS example, because it's like the mission becomes a destination. Like, yes. So if the other individual doesn't even have a destination in mind and we're basically going in circles, or you have two very different destinations, but as long as you agree with the actual destination, then all of the other routes and stops and turning around is like negotiable in that way, or who does what, who drives, or like all of this stuff. So I think that was also a great analogy for this. This has been absolutely wonderful. I wish I could ask you like every single question.
Thank you.
Absolutely love this and talk with you forever. So, but we are at time, so I do want to respect your time for that and truly appreciate you taking the time. Any final thoughts or anything that you want to add to the conversation for our audience?
No, I just want to say, Rola, this was fabulous. And thank you so much for reaching out. Thank you for putting together this lovely interview. This was a fantastic discussion. Just loved your commentary after every single response. I feel like you really made it conversational, and it was just an honor to be here today.
You just said so many things. I had to basically think through. I'm like, oh my God, I have so many thoughts on this. So no, this was so great. And thank you so much also for being real, being authentic. I think there's authentic conversations truly really show. And I think that these are those types of conversations where, the more authentic you are, the more it's beneficial for everyone. And I think our audience really took home a lot of, different skills and thought processes. And so I might continue to think about this. So I might message you later. I'm like, let's talk about this. But this has been so wonderful. Exactly. So thank you so much. Women leaders in the series. So you can go on our website, submit your questions ahead of time, and watch all of our other previous leaders. So thank you again.
Thank you. Have a great day.